All right, everyone, the secret is out. I am addicted to books and stories, and I hate starting podcast episodes, but Brian challenged me today
hmm
to just dig deep down and start this one because I love stories and reading and books. So I'm going to work on starting the podcast episodes because I don't know. I believe stories matter. Like, they're the number one thing I believe in. So
hmm
today's episode is actually entitled Why Do Stories Matter? So how are you doing today, Brian?
I am doing great. And yeah, stories definitely matter. So when you brought up the idea of doing a podcast kind of talking about stories, and, we've asked some of our friends and former guests on the pod to, tell us why they think, stories are important to them, why stories matter. And I think, yeah, it's a really good topic of conversation. And it's good to take a step back from, kind of the stories that you like or the stories that you want to see, and, just think about them, more on like a more philosophical level, like why are they important to you? And I think that that's a cool topic, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. So looking back at our podcast, which episodes do you think cover storytelling in your perspective?
I mean, really, I mean, it's easy to say kind of any of them, right? I mean, every time we sit down to record an episode, at least part of that is us telling a story, whether it be through a conversation that we're having about KOTOR, whether it's interviewing a guest, whether it's going through, kind of our fictitious film that's never going to happen that we had a good time. But yeah, I really think that, kind of any time that we sit down to record a podcast is really a good illustration in telling stories. We have kind of the more, standout ones in terms of being story driven. We spoke with the Hero's Journal about the hero's journey. We talked to the Hero's Journey podcast, stuff like that, that come to mind right away when I'm thinking of, more along the lines of like story structure. But
Yeah.
really for me, some of the most, fun and most storytelling parts I had were, when we were going through our proposed KOTOR trilogy and we had guests on and we were just kind of, hypothesizing what those sections of the story meant to me and to you and to our guest, and what we'd like them to look like and sound like and feel like. And, it's kind of like we were creating a story within the story that we were telling. So, like I said, really, I kind of feel that way about all of them. But yeah, there's certainly some standouts in terms of just kind of a more structured story narrative.
Yeah, for sure. I looking back on the podcast, I think when I first started it off, I was trying to show off trivia, what I know.
hmm
Sometimes looking back on episode 12 where we first talked about the hero's journey, I'm like, well, here's what I know, and I know it really well. But
Right.
maybe that's just me cringing because I'm just kind of hearing little baby Cassia in episode 12, and we have 130ish episodes out now, so
hmm
and episode 15, my sound was not that good, but we kind of hit on some of the Greco-Roman traditions, kind of hit on with the Anakin Skywalker story that I found interesting. And I kind of
hmm
think once we started covering the story of KOTOR in chronological order, how we would adapt it in episode 30, I was kind of more learning, kind of honing, developing my storytelling skills. Coden worked on it, I worked on it, you worked on it, and kind of developed a rapport. And it was just fun to kind of get all the different perspectives and just kind of celebrate a story we loved. In episode 64, we pitched the first film in our trilogy that never actually will happen or
hmm
ever happened. It's not happening, but we had fun, dang it, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, kind of one of the things that you really take away when you're thinking about why our story is important. Because we do this podcast, largely based off of the Knights of the Old Republic game and kind of timeline in the Star Wars universe, and we're able to, keep kind of dissecting and interpreting that story, and even little tweaks along the way kind of change the way that you look at the story and why it's important. And I know, I joined the podcast back in episode 62. So even in the time from when I started through the time, that we did our kind of like our wrap party episode, which was episode number
111.
Yeah, episode 111. I mean, I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think that both of our kind of perspective on the KOTOR story, I mean, changed over the course of those 50 odd episodes. And I think that that's really cool. And that stories, even stories that are told, are always evolving as kind of your own life experiences change, and your upbringings are different, and kind of your worldviews are different. So you just see things differently. And that's why stories are like a living, breathing thing that we've carried with us. Obviously the hero's journey did a good job at kind of breaking down the way that was structured, but stories have always been a part of us as human beings, and just the way that those continue to evolve with us, I think, is really fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I love like films like Alpha and Cave of Forgotten Dreams, which is like, I think, my favorite Werner Herzog documentary ever. And if you're on Instagram, there is a really cool GIF. I hope it's still there. It's called Werner Herzog Would Probably Approve of This Situation. I hope it's still there. And it tells a story. That's why I'm bringing it up, but no, just kidding. I was just bringing it up because I was a fan of it. But yeah, and like, as you said, you joined kind of around the 62 episode mark, and we had a lot of great fans and guests on, and kind of like we really started to really kind of learn and explore this world of KOTOR in an interesting way that I don't really think has been done before. And it really just increased my love of stories in general, the story of KOTOR and characters in general. So I don't know. I feel proud of the pod, really. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, it's changed kind of the perspective on Knights of the Old Republic, the way that we look at that. But I think that that's carried over then to the way that, at least personally, the way I view other Star Wars stories, and the way I kind of can identify with different story beats and things like that. So I think that it's just a good exercise, I think, to look at things a little bit more analytically. Of course, it's fun to go to a movie, or sit down on the couch with some popcorn and watch something and be entertained. But when you're able to kind of pull back from it and really think about what those stories mean to you, I think is a pretty fun exercise.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm like, do I love Star Wars too much, And it's like, you know what? I have a podcast with my friend all about Star Wars, and I feel like we cover other things, other topics. We talked about Waterman. We talked a lot about Dune, Batman, and we try to talk on real issues too. Like, who knows, like how well we may talk about it, but we try to like be well-rounded. Like, I try to watch a lot of films. I try to read a wide variety. I probably get too many books. That's what I kind of love about stories, is because when you kind of read one story, it's like you're sharing something with a lot of other things. But there is a good C.S. Lewis quote on fairy tales, because, like, to me, like, Star Wars is a bit of a fairy tale. And growing up, I was super into mythology, folk tales, fairy tales, stories from all over the world. It was cool to, like, read books on, like, how every country may see Santa Claus, or, like, these countries, like, don't celebrate Christmas, so instead of Santa Claus, they have this, Like, I was always very interested in like traditional kind of stories from all over the world, and I think like Star Wars is like the water that is offered that is most kind of like the, I guess like metaphorical pH scale of stories, like the most it taps into mythology, it taps into archetypes, and it taps into that well the most out of any property out there.
Hmm.
And I think that's why I'm drawn to Star Wars. It's not that I just love Star Wars. I think it's just that I've always loved these types of stories, and it kind of reminds me of this quote about fairy tales by C.S. Lewis when he says, "When I was 10, I read fairy tales in secret and would have been ashamed if I had been found doing so. Now that I am 50, I read them openly. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. Someday you'll be old enough to start reading fairy tales again." And to me, Star Wars is a fairy tale, and they have their times and places, but that's why I personally love Star Wars and I love stories. What about you? Why do you love Star Wars?
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars to me, I mean, it was something that I grew up with, and the story just it seemed to resonate with me, and I think that partially that's because it was, you know, aimed at children, but it had this very kind of simple core hero's journey, so you were able to kind of follow along with it, and kind of kind of live within it within yourself. You could see yourself and these characters going on this adventure because it was, like I said, it was geared at children. So you were able to kind of see that it wasn't as convoluted or as kind of cloudy as some other stories. So I think that from just like an ease of being able to identify yourself in it, I think that that's really something that appealed to not only to me but obviously to a lot of people because it's still here and it's bigger than it's ever been. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of you kind of fall into a story that you love. You're able to identify with it, and it resonates somewhere like inside of you. I don't know. It's hard to even because I don't think it's something that you necessarily can identify, but it's just something about the story is just really alluring to you. It's kind of like this magnetism that it has. And for me, that's what Star Wars was. And people could a lot of different fandoms out there, and things that people really like. But yeah, for me, it was Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, some people have Game of Thrones, some people have Lord of the Rings, and we are going to be covering them. But for me, like, if someone were to ask me, like, what's my one story, like, I think I love above all others, like, it'd be Star Wars. Like, and growing up, I did love Harry Potter as well, and Batman has always been an interesting character, but for
Hmm.
me, it kind of began and probably will end with Star Wars. And I try not to be myopic about Star Wars, but I love the type of story it is, and I just really love stories and characters. And if
Hmm.
anything, my love of Star Wars has kind of helped me expand like what I love. Like, it introduces me to different flavors, like Western flavors or mythological, like Greco-Roman flavors and all of that. And
Yeah.
stories nowadays are kind of like what I believe in. Like, they help me believe in humanity when there's a lot of things going on that are tumultuous, and I don't agree with it. It reminds me that back in the day, people were in caves and would crawl through dark, scary crevasses, and like paint
Hmm.
on walls and be together communally and enact rituals, and like to be able to recreate a massive animal in paint on a cave wall without like computers or a calculator. And that's amazing. People are capable of so much, and that's what people were doing thousands of years ago. And
Hmm.
that would have been very hard, but like, it just reminds me that this mattered to people, and we're still telling stories, so it has to matter just as much, because we're still doing it,
Exactly. Yeah. There's a big communal aspect, I think, to storytelling, throughout the ages. Like you'd mentioned, kind of these cave paintings, and they were doing it to, communicate and to share their stories with one another. Kind of even though it was dangerous, and sitting around fires and in villages and towns, and that's how stories, were passed down, orally and written stories, and all the way up to today. You have something, just a couple weeks ago we had Star Wars Celebration, where just thousands of people descend into a convention center because they're all sort of drawn and have this connection to this same story, because it resonates with people, and it helps you kind of identify a part of yourself that maybe you can't even explain very well, because I'm definitely not explaining it very well, but it's just something that you can kind of latch onto, and it becomes almost a part of yourself, a part of your psyche, and a part of kind of the persona you put out into the world, this story that you love.
Yeah. And nowadays, like, stories are what I believe in. Like, they're not literal, but they're true, if that makes sense. And because I grew up in a very literal, kind of insular, kind of orthodox community, and nowadays, like, stories kind of like are what helped me develop more empathy, learn how to grow, learn how to be a good person, and kind of broke down like a lot of the barriers that I didn't know were there. And stories teach me to be happy and to have hope, and taught me to be empathetic. And you kind of mentioned community, and that's why stories have been told, like, the word story in history, it's kind of like narrative, it's like the events that we tell, like, to learn. So, like, stories we learn through narrative, so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and every time you tell a story, it has some sort of objective, right? And sometimes it's it's to tell like a historical story, so it's to pass down information, but maybe the purpose is to to be humorous, or to set along like some sort of life lesson, or something. So there's a purpose to telling the stories. And I just think that it's really great to kind of be able to break them down kind of week in, week out.
Did you have some quotes from some of our previous guests and patrons?
Yeah, absolutely. So we asked some of our previous guests if they had kind of any input onto why stories or mythology mattered to them, and we kind of framed it, if you wanted to keep it, strictly about Star Wars or just stories in general. But it got a couple of responses back, so we wanted to share those with everyone here. So Leva Swotor, who has been on the podcast twice, she was on episode 93 and 124. She is our resident Swotor fashion expert. She says that I'd say the most important thing in these stories and mythology is a reminder of why goodness has triumphed in order for kindness and happiness to truly thrive for all people.
Wow.
And then Plo Kool, who's been on multiple times, he was on episodes 98 and 101 to talk about Dune, episode 116 to talk about The Green Knight with you. He was on episode 56 back before I joined in to talk about more storytelling, and then just recently to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi in 131 and 132. Plo Kool says, stories, especially stories steeped in myth, illuminate. They reveal truths about the world, about others, and about ourselves, whether it be the myths of the Greeks, Vikings, or Native Americans. We come back to these myths because we find meaning in them. We gravitate towards religions first and foremost because of the stories they tell us. Whether you are a Christian, a Buddhist, or even a stout atheist, myths contain truth for all. They are not merely a fiction, and that is why it is becoming increasingly important for more stories to retell myths of old. George Lucas saw the value of retelling the old myths for a new generation. So did the likes of Tolkien. People are yearning for meaning, which is why stories and myths can provide. So really well said. Of course, Plo Kool is our resident story expert. So yeah, I mean, a lot of good stuff there. Like you said, we kind of gravitate towards these stories that we like and find appealing and can take away. And I think that he mentions there about George Lucas. I think that's kind of hits the nail on the head, so to speak. He was able to draw kind of on all of these different kind of cultural inspirations. So you saw a lot of things, and it inspired a lot of people to go out and do a lot of things. So I think that's cool. And then we have a response from Travis, the Force Time Pod. Make sure you check out Force Time Pod. It's really great. He was on episode 82. We talked about, we did a fun kind of Q&A where we asked each other questions about The Last Jedi and KOTOR. But he says, stories and mythology are important to me because of the lessons they give that we can revisit over and over. Lessons that are timeless and can be passed down generations. One of my favorite lessons that I constantly go back to is Yoda in The Last Jedi teaching Luke the greatest teacher failure is. It's obviously hugely important to Luke's journey in The Last Jedi, but it's also something that we can remind ourselves each time we fail or come up short with something in real life. And yeah, that's a really good example of a real life lesson that you could take away from Star Wars or kind of any media or story. There are lessons that you can take, even though this is a fictional world of fictional characters, but that doesn't make that lesson any less true.
Yeah, and that's a good point, that failure is a great nutrient, I think, that we don't celebrate or respect enough, in stories. Like, it's a lot of times the hero learns the most from failure, and it's overcoming them through those lessons they learn that they are able to succeed. It's not just endless success, and so that's a really great point. I'm glad that Travis brought up.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks to those that sent those in. And Cassia, I think that you got a couple of responses as well.
Yeah, Marius said that life imitates art, just as art imitates life. In other words, we live in a society. And that's why fiction matters to him and why made-up stories matter. And then we have thought from C.S. Lewis from Christian Reflections, and it says, the very essence of our life as conscious beings all day and every day consists of something which cannot be communicated except by hints, similes, metaphors, and the use of those emotions themselves not very important, which are pointers to it. To me, that's a deep thought, where, like, what I believe in most are stories, and, like, there's so much that is ineffable in life and, like, indescribable, and it's a mystery, but what we really get value from is trying in a way that will never really succeed, is to pin down those mysteries, and kind of extrapolate meaning from that. And that's kind of an adventure and a challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we had a thought from Jake McFitt, who joined us to talk about the Revan novel in episode 134, and he said, stories represent entertaining escapism as well as teach me things about the world to help better myself. Fiction can be just as enlightening as nonfiction. They're just different flavors. And that's true. Nonfiction is great, but fiction teaches a lot of important lessons in empathy. Like, it's necessary. Stories are analogies for life, teach lessons. They're interesting and fun too. I can only speak for myself. I think it is the next step where science ends, our reality ends. Imagination is what propels us forward. As soon as that stops, hope is gone. Fiction and stories allow us to create more interesting and diverse realities. I like that point about hope, because sometimes it's really, 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 really hard to have hope. And sometimes we have to reach inside and create the hope in the form of a story, but stories are powerful and they help us move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. stories can be very healing in that sense. Whether it's a story that's talking about someone who might be going through a similar issue to what you're going through, or just give you a different perspective on the way to look at something. Stories can play a huge part in that, I think.
That reminds me, it was Franz Kafka's birthday the other day, and there's this quote I love by him. He, of course, was the author of The Metamorphosis, which is probably a short story everyone has read in school at least once. But what he said is, a book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. Like, I just get the metaphor of, like, a frozen heart and, like, just chipping away and, like, being able to, like, have it beat again, like, whether it's because of depression, mental health trauma, environmental or financial factors, or just like limited worldviews. Like, stories help us kind of like rip the exterior and find the true self inside.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point, because without kind of these stories and these tales, you're kind of left without anywhere to go to for inspiration. I mean, I know, like for myself, if I'm trying to feel inspired, there are different, creative people and creative outlets and different forms of media that I'm, kind of, naturally drawn to, and that will, kind of, spark something, imaginative and creative inside of me. And I think we all kind of have those places where we go to, whether it's a traditional story, like picking up a book, or if there's a band that you really like who kind of speak to you in, that kind of sense and their storytelling. But it's just kind of a place that you can go to where you can kind of get lost in it. And then you come out on the other side feeling, hopefully you feel, kind of refreshed and invigorated, but also, more inspired and more able to, you almost get like this clarity from it. And like I said, that could be from reading reading Lord of the Rings, if that's your favorite book, getting lost in that a couple of times a year, or listening to your favorite band, or just throwing on this TV show that you've watched 1,000 times, but when you've kind of consumed that story, it's kind of reloaded these things back into you.
Yeah, speaking of Lord of the Rings, there was a review of the Lord of the Rings that C.S. Lewis wrote, and he said, "A myth points for each reader to the realm he lives in most. It is a master key. Use it on what door you like." And then he continues, "The value of the myth is that it takes all the things we know and restores to them the rich significance which has been hidden by the veil of familiarity. The child enjoys his cold meat, otherwise dull to him, by pretending it is buffalo, just killed with his own bow and arrow. And the child is wise. The real meat comes back to him, more savory for having been dipped in a story. You might say that only then it is the real meat. If you are tired of the real landscape, look at it in a mirror. By putting bread, gold, horse, apple, or the very roads into a myth, we do not retreat from reality, we rediscover it." Because sometimes I think people are accused of, if they enjoy stories, it's like they're escaping reality. But in my view, I've learned more about reality, I think, through the lens of story. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I think that there is, part of that is true, right? There's some truth to that. There is some escapist parts of that. But I would kind of argue that sometimes that's important, and it's important for yourself to be able to do that. The trick is to not just limit yourself to doing that, to, kind of indulge in things that challenge you and will make you, kind of change your paradigm a little bit, and, to make you think on a more philosophical level. And I'm not saying that, if you only you have to watch these esoteric films to be that. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that I think that it's important to look at stories, beyond just kind of the surface level, and
Yeah.
what was the director, what were the writers, what was the videographers trying to say and telling this story. Maybe just look below the surface a little bit and try to see, if there are some things you could glean away from these stories, other than
Yeah.
I was entertained. And there's, like I said, there's not anything wrong with doing that, with switching the brain off from time to time. We all need to do it. We need to
Yeah.
recharge the batteries and just kind of tune out a little bit. But yeah, I think that it's important to kind of do both, and balance. Kind of like everything in life, you want to kind of pick from both sides from time to time.
Yeah. We need perspective, sometimes like escapism helps us see the picture clearer and bigger in HD, if you will, and
Yep.
it's a line, and everyone has their own line, and we can't just merely be entertained all the time. Sometimes we have to be challenged. We can't merely consume all the time. Sometimes we have to create or kind of reflect, and a balance is good, everyone kind of knows what kind of balance they need. Lord,
Yeah.
who is a patron, said, I think one of the many reasons fiction matters is it lets us explore ideas and perspectives that otherwise we wouldn't be able to explore in our everyday life. And that kind of goes back to perspective,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Coden said, I also think it allows a more complete perspective, as stories based on events can be riddled with all sorts of different interpretations, So enlarging our own perspectives and partaking of the perspectives of other people, like getting their view on things, can just make us more well-rounded and more empathetic. I think they are a way to communicate a deeper and different meaning of life, in addition to providing therapy and joy. And for me, I have definitely needed joy and therapy the last few years, and stories have been there to provide some of the deepest lessons I really needed these last few years. I don't know about you, but I definitely need additional modicums and ways to obtain joy in therapy.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing. 2 years ago, everyone kind of was shut in, and we were all watching Tiger King and baking sourdough bread. But yeah, I mean, you had to kind of search out stories because, A, it was a way to help keep you sane a little bit, but B, it can provide a level of catharsis, I think, to be able to experience, kind of these emotions and feelings in the way that stories are being told. So I think that, yeah, definitely over the past couple of years, stories have been, as important as they've ever been. Definitely.
Yeah. And a friend of mine said, good question. I think it sometimes helps to escape out of the mind, and fictions create great fantasy. Reality isn't always fun or stimulating.
Yeah, true. Fact.
And then one friend said, because humans are storytellers and it is basically our lifeblood to need it. And he asked me, like, how about you? And it's like, my answer is pretty much literally that. Because if I can bring up cave paintings, I will. And I'm like, caves. We've been doing this forever. If anything, we should bring back caves. Not just man caves, but literal caves. And like,
yeah,
I just love the communal aspect of it, because it's to me, it's like celebrating like humanity and the connection that we have, and the patterns of birth, life, death, and nature, and I think it's beautiful. And if anything, just take him, like, if you need to watch Cave of Forgotten Dreams, I recommend it, and I love it. Probably too much, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Cave paintings, good way to go to tell your stories for sure. Yeah, we can bring that back, I think.
Yeah, Star Wars needs more cave paintings. So, and then when I asked my friend, in your perspective, why do you believe fiction and stories matter? They said, that's a great question. I'd say there are two primary reasons. First, it enables us to imagine possibilities and outcomes in life that we would not otherwise experience. Second, maybe more importantly, we learn empathy from vicariously experiencing the life events and feelings of another. And to me, that was like a mic drop through the heart. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, yeah, like I've said a couple of times. I mean, it's a good way to, to be able to identify kind of feelings within yourself, but then also to be able to see the the feelings and the intentions of someone else. That's something that I like to talk about when watching a film or a movie, and that's does it really affect your paradigm and the way that you see the world at all? And not everything will, and not everything has to. I don't think that that's necessarily a key to it being a good story or not. But I think that if something is able to make you look at the world differently and hopefully more openly, I think that's a good thing. And obviously storytelling has had that purpose since the dawn of man, I guess.
Yeah. Because it gives us a chance to transport ourselves somewhere else, whether it's another period in time, romance, some sci-fi place, etc. There's a reason why readers are smarter people who don't vote Republican.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Readers tend to be more smart. That's true. And yeah, I think that it's good to be able to get out of your head and into kind of a different world. I mean, and you can tell when that's happened when you're reading a book, right? And you have the term where you can't put it down because you just get kind of swept up into being in this other time or this other place or with these other characters. So yeah.
Well, I can only speak from why they matter to me. They allow me to step out of my own world to experience other viewpoints and reinforce the idea that anything is possible.
Yeah, there you go. I like that.
Then storytelling has always been a part of the world as a whole. It's a part of our language and has been passed down for generations. I also think imagination is very important to instill in young kids because that helps them grow and become creative.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, getting into the creative mindset, I think, is a really important aspect of storytelling, to be able to inspire and be able to see yourselves in things. And that's, we've spoken with it, a couple times with our pal Hooney, as to why, representation and inclusion are so important. And that right there is exactly why it is. I mean, if you want to inspire the next generation, they need to be able to see themselves in the stories. So,
and the stories they tell.
Yep.
Yeah. And then another friend responded, that's a good question. I suppose that for me, it has to do with storytelling in general. It is a major characteristic that sets us apart from all other creatures. We want to record our history, share our personal narratives, make people laugh, and feel something more. We want others to learn from our mistakes, conquer follies of the past, and strengthen themselves for a brighter day. Parenting and raising children to welcome them into a world of joy almost requires these ideas. It can help them become as us or greater. And then my sister said, is this for like a work thing? I think it's much more relatable than nonfiction. People can understand a new narrative or read a story from a new perspective. Simple but true.
Yeah, very true, very true.
Briefly, they can help people heal, raise awareness and pose important questions, build empathy and reveal truths about human nature and our society, all of which is more needed than ever these days. And I asked a sick friend because they entertain me when I have COVID right now. Been watching a lot of movies. They preserve culture, they're good teaching devices, can teach lessons from history that need to be passed on, and can shape beliefs. And of course, that can be shaped for positive or negative, but I think the stories that stay with us, stories evolve and they change themselves into what people need. They're timely and timeless. It's kind of like an ocean, that stories reach. They reach us through the tide of time. And I think the positive stories are the ones that stay with us, but there are people who can manipulate stories to for evil, but I think the ones that are celebrated and stay with us are the positive ones. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Now, certainly when you're talking about stories as a medium, I mean, you are meeting whoever is telling the story kind of part way because you're bringing in your own sort of worldviews and upbringing and things to them. But yeah, I think, if you think back to, the great stories, the ones that we celebrate and, push forward, they tend to be stories that are written about hope and about persevering and, about doing the right things. And I think that speaks, to us as, a human civilization, and that we like stories of hope and belonging and, just making the world a better place, defeating evil and, coming together. Those are the stories that we keep telling and keep adapting and, keep, tweaking to retell in different formats and things. So definitely.
Yeah. I'll definitely have to pitch, and we'll have to link Why Humans Run the World by Yuval Noah Harari. If we pronounce that wrong, please let us know and we'll correct it. But it's a cool perspective on how humans operate, and it kind of helps us understand our questions about fiction and storytelling. And maybe, not everyone believes that every dual reality is made for the purpose of control, but it's an interesting scientific perspective on why we do what we do, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And we also talked with Gabe from our episodes on meditation and Buddhism and Batman, why he thinks fiction matters, and we'll also link a YouTube clip, George Lucas on Star Wars being anti-authoritarian. That's him and James Cameron talking about some of the themes in Star Wars. And Gabe said, a quote I love to live by is that literature is not created in a vacuum. It is a response to the social conditions it's curated in. Fiction is an opportunity to discuss societal events and commentary through the lens of a made-up world, just like George used Star Wars to talk about anti-imperialism and fascism. And I realize I am a white woman, and I am very privileged, but I've definitely learned to have more empathy, and I learned the importance of more inclusion and, the importance of diverse stories being told by the people who need to see themselves represented. That's important. In some stories, mythology are sacred and belong to the people that tell them, and that's something I've learned. But I guess what have you learned about inclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, good stories are, hopefully on some level are going to, kind of challenge your paradigm, the way that you look at the world and the way that you view the world. And I think that, for a lot of people, you're not maybe you're not seeing other civilizations or other people's stories unless you are, you're doing that through a book or a movie or a TV show. So hopefully you're able to do that because, yeah, it's really important to not, kind of isolate yourself and live in a bubble. It's important to see, what other cultures, what other societies can offer, to listen to their stories, to hear what they have to say. That's ultimately very important as, you try to, find your place in the world, and we're all different and we all come from different backgrounds, but, just having a, being empathetic and hearing those stories. And, I hopefully it makes you a better rounded person. And, ultimately that's able to happen, through storytelling. It's not, that's really the only way that you're ever going to, kind of get that glimpse into, into other parts of the world, other religions, other civilizations. So yeah, I think that, stories like that are ultra important.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we talk about Joseph Campbell or we talk about Chris Vogler or Maria Tatar and other thinkers and authors, but today we kind of wanted to keep it a bit more real, be vulnerable, and talk about why stories matter to us, like using our words and your words, our listeners and contributors and our patrons, and if you think there's something we missed, totally got wrong, please let us know, and we can always discuss it. And that's the thing about stories, and that's the thing about stories is that and mythology is that they're always evolving. Like no one ever has the final quote unquote canon. Like they evolve and tell. Sometimes it feels like stories tell themselves, like they're linked to the past through the timeless lens of things, but they're also timely. They're what we need right now. And I guess I just wanted to bear my testimony on the power of stories and that I love them and I try to tell them, but I'm probably not as good as I want or hope to be, but I love stories and they've made me a better person, and I hope you guys feel that love.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I want to send a huge thank you to everyone who submitted a, why they thought the stories were important to them. We think that that's awesome. We got so many responses. So thanks to everyone who pitched in to help make this episode happen. And Cassia just said it, wanted to talk about some stories, what they meant to us, and maybe, hopefully touch on what they mean to the general world. But we are by no means experts. We are also just, consumers of stories, and we like to get together to talk about them. So, keep reading and absorbing stories, keep taking things away from them, and, keep talking about them, because I think that's important for our own kind of humanity narrative, the human narrative, as you will. So.
Yeah. May the myth be with you.